Chapter 41. You are listening at novelfull.audio. 41. Lusty affair in his office. When I touched you here. You were so wet. Your pussy dripping with your juices. Ace continued with his story of that night. By that time, I didn't care anymore if his words were true or not, and I wasn't interested in knowing more about that night. All I cared about was the pleasure that he was making me feel right now and how I could possibly make him give more to me. My hips moved against his hand invitingly, grinding my pussy against his hand and fingers. I wanted nothing more than to have him touch me there directly, and soon my wish was fulfilled. Ace pulled the fabric covering my hole to the side before running his fingers along the length of my wet slit. I moaned so loudly as I lifted my hips upwards. Ace began stroking my wet pussy folds and I cried out his name. "You're so wet, maybe even wetter than that night," Ace teased. "Don't tease me anymore," I pleaded softly before more lewd moans escaped my lips. Ace chuckled next to my ear before his fingers plunged firmly inside my hole, stretching me and then filling me up deep inside. "Oh! Ha!" I cried out as Ace continued ramming his fingers inside of my wet hole. His fingers are so long and so thick, and they were stretching my insides. Ace moved his fingers around inside of me and I felt the pleasure of his touch all along my pussy walls. My legs went weak as he felt inside of me as if searching for my pleasure spot. "When I thrust against your sensitive spot here, your pussy clenches so tightly around my fingers," Ace said knowingly. His fingers thrusted sharply against my sensitive spot, and I screamed. I hoped that no one was here to hear me because I could no longer hold in my voice. Ace was driving me crazy with need, and the proof of my lust was pouring out in streams in between my legs, wetting my thighs in the process as he started fingering my pussy fast and hard. Your hips wouldn't stop moving against my hand. Your pussy clenched around my fingers as you begged me to finger you faster and harder. Ace recounted the event from his memories. His hand moved roughly against my pussy, shoving his thick and long fingers in and out of my hole. His fingers beat inside of me repeatedly and my hips moved wildly, riding his fingers for more pleasure. My pussy clenched non-stop around his fingers as it tried to suck his fingers in even deeper inside of me. "Ah, ah," I moaned loudly. "You're so loud even though you're in your boss's office." Ace whispered into my ear before his tongue snaked out to lick my earlobe. His fingers continued fucking my love hole relentlessly. It didn't seem like he was going to stop, and I didn't want him to. However, my body was almost at its limit. His fingers rammed against my pleasure spot, driving me closer and closer to the edge. I could feel my orgasm fast approaching. I wanted to come. I wanted him to make me come. "Oh, Ace," I moaned and whimpered. "About to come already?" Ace asked knowingly. I couldn't speak anymore, so I just nodded my head against his chest before I buried my face there in embarrassment. "He's going to make me come. Don't hide your face. I want to see your face when you come from my fingers," Ace demanded strictly. I came crying out his name before my mind went completely blank. My orgasm shook my entire body as it writhed from pure pleasure on Ace's lap. He held me and kissed my hair as I tried to deal with the devastating effects of my orgasm. It felt unbelievably good. It made me forget all my troubles and stress just like a potent and addictive drug. Knock knock knock. Suddenly, someone knocked on the door to Ace's room. My body froze as I started to panic. I opened my eyes, and I was greeted with the sight of Ace's office. That's right, we were in his office, and I let him do all that to me while we were still in his office. The realization made me want to die from shame. Ace, on the other hand, seemed relaxed as his fingers slowly slid out of my wet pussy hole. "What is it?" Ace called loudly to whoever was on the other side of the door. "Sir, you have a meeting with the CEO of Quantflex in 5 minutes, the man politely informed. Quantflex must be one of the company's top clients. They are one of the biggest tech companies dealing with accounting and financial services. "I'll be right there," Ace replied calmly. Ace reached out for some tissue from the coffee table before he started leisurely wiping my juices off of his hand and finger. I was too embarrassed about what had happened between us for me to say anything. It wasn't just about today. If Ace wasn't lying, then I went all the way with him when I was drunk too. I could still recall the marks on my body and the ache in my pussy when I woke up in that hotel room. The man I had sex with that night was Ace. I still didn't want to believe it. Sorry, sweetie, but as you just heard, I have a meeting to go to. I would love if you could accompany me, but I don't think that you're quite ready for that right now. Ace said as he stared down at the disarray state that my clothes were in. My hand quickly flew to cover my naked breasts while I pulled down my skirt with the other. Ace laughed softly at my overly delayed reaction to cover myself before he stood up from the sofa. There's no need to rush, I'll make sure that you remember everything that happened between us that night. Have a good day at work, Karina. I look forward to hearing some good news from you, Ace said with mocking politeness. His hand reached out to ruffle my hair playfully before he walked past me and out of the room. I squeezed my eyes closed tightly as I felt head rush to my cheeks. Ace laughed a little before I heard the door opening and then closing after him. To be continued. Chapter 42. You are listening at novelfull.audio. 42. Once in a lifetime opportunity. It came as no surprise to me that I couldn't go to sleep at all that night, and that was because I couldn't stop thinking about Ace and what he did to me. I had no idea how long I had been standing here under the shower as warm water splashed on my body from above. Although it had been many hours since then, I could still feel his touch on every single part of my body that he had caressed. My eyes closed blissfully before a soft sigh escaped my lips as I recalled both his tender and his rough touches. I can't believe I let him touch me like that. He's the CEO of the company that I work for, so it was still hard for me to imagine that we did that, and we also did it in his office of all places. He made me come so hard that it felt too good. I covered my face with my hands as embarrassment washed over me in waves, and I knew that I was blushing. Although there was clearly no one else there to witness my embarrassed reaction, I felt shy towards myself. If what Ace said was true, then the things that he did to me today didn't even compare to what we did together that night at the hotel. Argh! I let out a frustrated scream as my hands pulled on my hair. Of all the men in this world, why did I have to have a one-night stand with my CEO? After another long while of standing under the warm water, I realized that nothing good would come of me just wasting my time and standing there. I better get out before my skin starts to shrivel off of my meat and bones. Project Alpha kick. Off, that was the message that popped up on the notification on my phone. It was already evening, but someone was still busy at work and had sent a meeting appointment in my calendar for a meeting right at the start of tomorrow's working day. Alpha Project. What on earth is that? Regardless, it sounded very important. While drying my hair with a towel with one hand, I used my other hand to click and scroll into the content of the meeting invitation. I gasped in shock when my eyes landed on the list of meeting attendees. Oh my God! I whispered, more in amazement than in shock. Ace was the chairperson of the meeting, but that wasn't what I was gawking at. The other meeting participants were the top talents that I have always dreamt of working with. This is Jeremy, the rising star of the creative department. Many of his commercials were nominated for awards, and he's still so young too. He must be around my age or even younger. Richard is rumored to be the next head of planning. Another genius in the company that I have always admired for his spot-on and cost-efficient planning for production and marketing. He's also rumored to be a mathematical genius. If that was the case, I was sure that he must be the best-looking one out there. He was tall and super hot. It is common knowledge that many women in the company have their sights set on him despite that no dating rule. Juliana, the star of the marketing team that works more closely with Ace than the current head of marketing. She was hand-picked by Ace himself, and then he somehow snatched her from one of our competitor companies. My eyes must have been as wide and round as saucers as I stared at the list. There were other famous people in the company in the list. This really was the dream team comprising of the top talent, just like my manager had told me. She wasn't lying at all. It had always been a distant dream of mine to work with some of these amazing people, so I couldn't quite believe it that I would get the chance to work with all of them all at once on this project. Is this even real? I slapped my cheek so hard that it stung. Although it was painful, a wide smile formed on my lips when I got the confirmation that this must be reality. If you work as my secretary, I'll put you on all those projects so that you can learn. You can flourish while you watch and learn with the best of the best. Ace's convincing words came back to me, and I could hear his voice bouncing around in my mind. I guess he wasn't lying at all when he said that I would learn from the best of the best. The names of the people on this list were truly the best of the best, not just in this company but probably in the entire industry as well. My heart was beating so fast as I clutched my phone tightly in my hand with a mix of nervousness and excitement. This was a rare opportunity that I would probably stumble upon once in a lifetime. However, it didn't take me long to realize that it was an opportunity that I shouldn't take. I plopped down weakly on my bed as I stared regretfully at the meeting invitation on my phone screen. The timing of everything was just too perfect that it was suspicious. After I supposedly had a one-night stand with Ace, I was invited to join the CEO office where only the most talented are picked out to join. Then I was invited to Ace's office where he offered me a new role as his personal secretary. I rolled onto my back and stared up at the plain white ceiling above my head before my brows knitted into a frown. No matter how or no matter who looked at this, it was obvious that I only got this position because I slept with the CEO. If I didn't have sex with him that night, none of these opportunities would have been showered on me and I would be stuck working in my old role, which wasn't a lacking opportunity at all. I was proud of my role and what I was doing as well as the colleagues that I worked with. To be continued. Chapter 43. You are listening at novelfull.audio. 43. Sleeping my way up. Even if everyone else doesn't know that I slept with Ace, the fact that I knew was bad enough for me. I knew that there were people who took these shortcuts in life to climb up the corporate ladder, but sleeping my way up wasn't how I wanted to progress in my career. I wanted to get up there with my own merits and achievements. I threw my phone onto the bed before I sighed loudly. The reason that I wanted to make it up there wasn't that I could be up there, but it was because I wanted to have the skills and the opportunity to put my creative ideas out there to touch the hearts of people with my work in various forms of media. Sleeping my way up wouldn't give me the skills required to achieve my dreams even if I ended up making it up there. Plus, without the real skills, how long can I keep fooling geniuses like Jeremy, Richard, Juliana and the other on the team for? I closed my eyes and turned onto my stomach before burying my face into my pillow. The answer to that was simple. I can't fool them when I can't even fool myself. When tomorrow comes, I'll find a chance to tell Ace that I've decided to turn down the role of his personal secretary and all that came with it. Come what may. Even if I have to lose my job, I'll take it that I'm just paying for all the sins that I've accumulated for the past 2 years of secretly dating Kyle. That relationship was a complete and utter failure as well. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to get a hold of Ace before the meeting in the morning started for Project Alpha. Catching him after the meeting seemed like the only sure way for me to get to meet him, so I decided to join the meeting. The meeting was held in one of the large meeting rooms on Ace's floor on the other side of the floor, away from where his office was. When I walked in, everyone was already seated. Although I was 5 minutes early, the other people were already seated at the meeting table. Ace was nowhere in sight, though. The other people had their eyes on me while no one said anything. Jeremy was the only one who nodded at me in slight acknowledgement that I was present in the room. Despite their slightly cold attitude towards me, none of them looked surprised that I was joining. "Excuse me," I whispered softly as I sat down on an empty seat. The atmosphere was full of tension, and it felt very suffocating to me as I glanced around at all the superstars seated at the table. I felt like a fangirl stuck in the presence of her favorite celebrities. My chest felt so tight, and I didn't know how to react at all. The others stared at their laptop screen, completely absorbed in their work. The sound of the meeting room door opening broke the silence. Everyone got up from their seat and started greeting Ace as he strode confidently into the room. "Morning, everyone. I apologize for the early morning meeting," Ace said before he took his seat at the head of the table. Ace glanced over at me, and a small smile curved his beautiful lips. He didn't say anything to me, and the meeting started immediately. "We've got a new project on our hands. Project Alpha is just a simple code name that I came up with. We'll stick with that unless anyone has a sexier name because it doesn't really matter. Jumping in, Juliana will take us through the requirements as this is a project that came in through our marketing team," Ace said as he gestured with his hand for Juliana to take the center stage. "Yes, sir," Juliana said enthusiastically as she stood up from her seat. Everyone's eyes, including mine, were on the large presentation screen as Juliana stood next to it and began walking us through the details of the project. Once again, this year, the Ashford Creative Competition is upon us. As all of you are probably already aware, the Ashford Award is awarded to the best advertisement that will be used to support a non-profit organization of the Ashford Foundation's choice. Although the non-profit organization that the foundation chooses to support changes every year, the theme of the competition remains the same. The Ashford Award will be rewarded to the commercial that best represents the goal of the foundation and the non-profit organization and attracts the most PR and attention from the general public to support the cause, Juliana explained in her clear voice as she flipped through the slides of her presentation. Everyone nodded along with her in understanding. She was right, everyone in the industry and also some out of it, knows about the Ashford Foundation and the competition that they hold every year. However, probably only those involved in the industry and its clients will know the true meaning behind the competition and what it really means in the business world. This competition isn't just about supporting a good cause. For advertising media companies like ours, it is the competition that decides who will dominate the market this year. Every year since the founding of this company, we have participated in the competition with the intent to win. It is common for the winner of this competition to be referred to as the best advertising company. Of course, that also means that clients will flock to us if we win this. After all, our clients are following very closely on the progress and result of this competition, Juliana went on to explain the true meaning behind this competition. "I've heard of this competition before and the fact that Jess's Hills participates every year. Of course, the company has managed to win the competition for most of the years since its founding and that is partly how the company has cemented its position as the best advertising company. I have never been involved in a project of this scale that has the pride of the company riding on it before. This was just huge." To be continued. Chapter 44. You are listening at novelfull.audio. 44 Project Alpha Note. None of the companies and organizations in this novel are real and does not intend to refer or reference any real existing organizations. This is purely a work of fiction. It goes without saying that if we were to lose this competition, then our market share will probably be eaten up by our competitors, especially whoever happens to emerge as the winner. This was the unspoken truth that everyone in the room understood, including myself. Now, this is what you've all been waiting for. The theme and the non-profit organization that we're supposed to be creating our commercial for, Juliana said before she paused for effect. When she pressed the clicker button to go to the next slide, people gasped before low murmurs started filling up the room. I had a very similar reaction to the other people in the room. This is just brutal. I winced and closed my eyes for a moment to collect myself before I gather my strength to look up at the screen again. Juliana had started playing a video clip that showcased dogs in very poorly managed and unhygienic cages before the clip quickly went on to show dogs being butchered with a knife. Then scene that proceeded to show the skinning process and then how the meat was then displayed and sold in wet markets. Dog meat trade. I whispered to myself in shock. Just as you've probably surmised from the video just now, the theme for this year's competition is raising awareness to end the dog meat trade globally. The non-profit organization that the foundation has chosen to support is R18, which is the leading organization advocating for animal rights. In recent years, this organization has been focused on leading efforts to end the dog meat trade, and one of the key levers that they have identified as important to the cause is to raise public awareness regarding the issue, and that is where we come in, Juliana explained smoothly and flawlessly. Even her presentation skills were flawless, no wonder she is the star from the marketing department. After that, Juliana went through the expected output, which was a commercial that would help raise awareness regarding the issue as well as raise donations to support the cause. Once Juliana returned to her seat after wrapping up her presentation, everyone's attention turned to Ace to see what he had to say. It's an interesting theme for sure, and it's going to be a challenging one with public opinion on both sides of the fence and a bunch of people who are just sitting on the fence. Plus, I don't think that we can achieve anything without interacting with the dogs, so that's going to be fun for sure. Needless to say, we're going to have to do everything to win this without fail. Ace said determinedly as he stared at his fellow colleagues. I gulped at the intensity of his glare and the fire of determination that burned within them. He's so serious, passionate, and motivated about this that it made me start to feel the same way. I felt his energy and his feelings in every cell of my body, and I was certain that the other people seated at the meeting table felt the same way. Some tasks have been assigned as displayed on the screen. Just think about how you would approach this and give it your best. Ace said very calmly yet encouragingly before the meeting came to an official close. Still slightly stunned from the unexpected weight of the project just now, the real purpose of me being here almost slipped my mind. Ace was already making his way out of the door. If I don't follow him now, I'm going to lose him. Quickly, I got out of my seat and ran out of the door. I could feel the eyes of the other people on my back, but I didn't have the time to care much about that right now. I need to catch up to Ace no matter what. Excuse me. I called after him in the hallway. Judging from the direction that he was headed, I could guess that he was making his way back to his office on the other side of the floor. At the sound of my voice, Ace halted in his steps before he turned around to face me. Rena. Ace said my name softly with a curious look on his face. The way my nickname rolled off his tongue sounded so seductive. Wait. I shook my head slightly to clear my head while Ace continued to look at me curiously. I had so many things that I wanted to talk to him about. We're in public. Please don't call my name like that. I mumbled a complaint. Why not? Other people can call you by your pet name, but I can't. Ace said with a hint of irritation in his voice. This isn't what I needed to talk to him about at all. What am I doing? Never mind that for now. I need to talk to you. I said before I got sidetracked again. For now. Huh. Ace said before he chuckled at me. Shit. If I don't concentrate, I'll get thrown off topic again. I didn't come here to talk to him about his usage of my nickname while we are in public. Sir, I really need to talk to you. I began again. I get it. Come with me to my office, I don't like talking in the hallway. Ace said curtly. Without another word, he turned on his heels and continued walking down the hallway. Why is he walking so fast? My heels clacked against the floor as I tried my best to keep up with him. Once we were inside his office, Ace gestured for me to take the seat opposite his at his work table before he locked the door behind us. The clicking sound of the lock made me feel slightly panicked, but Ace seemed as calm and collected as ever as he took his seat behind his table and rested his chin on his fist. His hazel eyes narrowed slightly as he stared at me from across the table. For a moment, I wondered what he saw when he looked at me. The thing is, I began saying. To be continued. Chapter 45. You are listening at novelfull.audio. 45. Turning him down, have you decided? Ace asked before I could even finish my sentence. I guess I didn't even need to say it. Ace already knew what I was here to talk about. I couldn't help but wonder which part of his request was referring to. The becoming his secretary part of becoming his girlfriend part. Regardless of which part he was referring to, my answer was the same. I'm very sorry but I can't accept the role of being your personal secretary nor taking a place in the CEO's office team, I stated firmly. And why is that? Ace asked as he lifted his brows at me in wonder. Because I got this opportunity because I slept with you and if I continue being around you then I'll probably. I didn't let myself finish that thought, fully aware that we were in the same room that we got extremely intimate very recently. Honestly, I didn't even dare let my eyes travel to the sofa where he played with me until I cried out loudly from the pleasure. My body trembled slightly at the thought before I completely shut it away. Well did I said in a small voice before I hesitated to go on. How do I tell him that I didn't want to sleep my way up? What is it? Ace asked, urging me to go on with a hint of impatience in his voice. He's the CEO so he probably doesn't have all day to spend with me here while I struggled to get my words out. The thing is. I began again but couldn't quite go on. Ace cocked his head to the side as his eyes narrowed dangerously at me. I had a feeling that he would kill me if I failed the third time at spitting it out. The so-called three-strike rule or something. Well, this might sound very strange but, I can't accept this position because I don't want to sleep my way up the corporate ladder. I really want this position, but it doesn't mean anything to me if I didn't rightfully earn it, I said in one breath before I lost my nerve again. After spitting that out, I felt a brief moment of relief. However, that didn't last long. One look at Ace and I regretted the things that I had just said. It was clear from the way he looked at me that he didn't like what he had just heard, and he seemed more disappointed than angry. After a few seconds of staring at me, he heaved a loud and long sigh. What makes you think that? He asked calmly as he leaned back in his chair. His eyes never left my face and I felt small and extremely intimidated by his unwavering stare. My throat felt so dry, and I wasn't sure how to answer his question. Well, you offered me this job because we had that one night stand that night at the hotel. Right? I asked in return. Ace did not immediately deny it but neither did he confirm my doubt. He just stared at me with a look of complete disbelief on his face before he shook his head from side to side slowly. What a ridiculous thing to say about yourself. Ace said, and he clearly sounded extremely disappointed. Excuse me? I asked, confused at what he was getting at. How can you say something like that about yourself? How much do you have to look down on yourself and your self-worth for you to say something like that, Rena? Ace asked before he grinned disapprovingly at me. Me? Look down on myself? What does he even mean by that? It's precisely because I don't want to look down on myself or have anyone else look down on me that I'm refusing his offer. Which part of that doesn't he understand? I don't get what you're saying at all. I'm sorry. I said while trying to sound polite. Don't sell yourself short, Karina, Ace said curtly. I'm turning this position down precisely because I don't want to do that. I don't want people to misunderstand that I got to join the team because I spent the night with you. I tried desperately to explain. And who told you that that was the reason why you were chosen to join the team? Ace asked with an amused look on his face. The way he was looking at me made me feel like a young child who doesn't understand the way of the world. I may be younger but I'm not dumb. No one did but I heard about the new role after I spent the night with you so. I mumbled softly. So, you assume that I offered you this position simply because I slept with you once? Ace asked as if what I said was the most ridiculous thing on earth. Not sure what else to say, I just nodded my head once. Ace stared at me before his lips curved into a smile that soon turned into laughter. I watched in confusion as Ace started laughing louder and louder as if I had just told him the best joke ever. You think. Excuse me. You think that I gave you this important job because I slept with you once? Really? You know, I told you not to look down on yourself, but do you honestly think that your sex was good enough to make me enlist you into this company's dream team? Ace asked as he shook his head. I stared at Ace blankly as he continued to laugh some more at me. Such confidence, he scoffed at me before laughing some more. Then that you didn't offer me the role because of that? I asked in a soft whisper. I don't know what you take me for, but there's no way I would do something like that, Ace said before he turned around in his chair and opened a drawer. I watched as he pulled out a folder and began flipping through it as if looking for something. When he found what he was looking for, he turned around to face me once again before placing a piece of paper on the table. What is this? I asked softly. If you don't believe me, then why don't you take a look at this? Ace replied calmly. To be continued. Chapter 46. You are listening at novelfull.audio. 46. Good sex isn't enough. Ace pushed over the piece of paper across the table my way. I picked the paper up and began reading it. Actually, I'm not supposed to show you this. It's supposed to be kept confidential, especially from you, but I'll make an exception this once, Ace explained sternly. I would like to kindly request for your consideration to promote Miss Karina Miller to join the CEO's office as a representative of the design department. Despite having only a few years of experience with the firm, Karina has shown outstanding dedication and talent in her job. I felt tears form in my eyes as I continued reading the one-page letter of recommendation that Ace had given to me. Honestly, I had no idea that my manager would do something like this for me. When she told me about the opportunity, she never said anything about the fact that she recommended me. Lauren has a keen eye for talent, and she is a very honest and straightforward colleague of mine. If she wasn't truly convinced of your talent and capabilities, she would never have recommended you for this role, Ace said sternly after he had surmised that I had finished reading the letter. I didn't know anything about this, I admitted in a whisper while still in shock. I guessed as much. Lauren doesn't like to take much credit, so she probably told you that I demanded to have you as my secretary or something along those lines. It's not entirely untrue, though. Although I assigned you to this role based partly on her recommendation, I was the one who made the final decision, Ace explained honestly. I was stunned speechless. Never did I think that Lauren would request for Ace to promote me like this. She never mentioned anything to me, and I didn't think I qualified to join the CEO's office either. Suddenly, I started feeling extremely guilty for accusing Ace. It was all a misunderstanding that I arrived to all alone in my own head. I blinked rapidly as I tried to take in deep breaths to calm myself and to prevent my tears from falling. Here is the boring paperwork that I filled out to request for your transfer from Lauren's department to the CEO's office. In case you still don't believe me, you can see the date of the document here, Ace said as he slid over another piece of paper my way. It wasn't like I didn't believe him at that point. I could feel that Ace probably didn't have any real reason to lie to me. My eyes fell down to the date on the document that he showed me before my eyes widened in surprise. The date on the document was a few days before the night that I slept with Ace. So that means. It's true that I enjoyed sleeping with you more than enough to make me want to do it again, but I would never choose someone for such an important job simply because I wanted to fuck her, Ace said before he smiled charmingly at me. I murmured before I realized that I didn't have anything more to say. That is not how things work at this company, and that is definitely not how I operated. I am extremely disappointed that you did not know that. Not only did you underestimate your own abilities and your worth, you offended Lauren's judge of talent, and you insulted my leadership and my professionalism, Ace reprimanded me sternly. He really was the CEO. I felt so scared of him, but I knew that what he said was spot on true. I'm very sorry, sir. I apologized as I tried to keep myself from crying from the shame. I despise cocky and arrogant people, but you should never be too humble either, Ace said as if he was teaching me an important lesson. I will remember that. I mumbled softly in response. I stared into the face of the man who was probably the most cocky and arrogant person that I knew. What he said to me felt quite ironic coming out of his mouth. The day when you're as good as me, you can start getting all cocky, Ace said as if he could tell what I was thinking with ease. Yes, sir. I replied. Well, now that that is out of the way. Do you still have any reason to refuse the position? Ace asked with a bright smile on his lips. Suddenly, it felt like all that difficult talk between us never happened and I found myself feeling extremely relief about it. Well. No, sir. I replied in defeat. In the end, I couldn't come up with another reason to turn down the opportunity. If I had to be completely honest, I probably wanted to take this leap of faith and embark on a challenging journey just to see where it would lead me. Hopefully, it would lead me closer to achieving my dream. After suddenly being dumped by Kyle, all my dreams of sharing a loving future with him was shattered into countless pieces. If I didn't have anything left, then I had to hang on to my dream and my career tightly with both hands, even if it meant that I had to deal with this wicked yet charming devil in front of me. Excellent. I look forward to working with you, Karina. Ace said with utmost satisfaction. That being all said and done, I had somehow accepted to work as Ace's secretary. However, I didn't have any experience at working a job like this and I didn't quite understand what the role entailed. I've only seen other secretaries do basic tasks to support their boss, but it was clear that Ace seemed to have something at least slightly different in mind. To be honest, I'm not quite sure what I have to do as your secretary. I admitted quite shyly. It's simple. You'll do everything that I ask you to. You'll go everywhere that I go. Just stay by my side and learn. Ace said like it was supposed to be obvious. He doesn't mean that literally, right? To be continued. Chapter 47. You are listening at novelfull.audio. 47. Sealed with a kiss, I see. I mumbled with a small nod of my head. Any other questions? Ace asked. About Project Alpha, what are your expectations of me? I asked. I would be a big liar if I said that I didn't want to work on such an important and challenging project like this one. It was a well-known honor to be staffed on this project, and the final of the competition is live broadcasted on television. It became a tradition for employees of the company to stay up late at night on that day to watch the competition live together at the office while cheering our company on. If we won, then everyone would drink together to celebrate until sunrise. If we lost, people drank the night away anyways as a way to deal with their disappointment. Help me, Karina. Give it your best shot and do what you're best at. According to Lauren, you're supposed to be talented in design, right? Imagine, think and create. Ace said before he smiled brightly at me. His smile felt mysterious, charming, and extremely arrogant at the same time. Ace always brimmed with confidence, and he seemed to have everything under control all the time. I began wondering what it would be like to work closely with him. One thing was for sure, if all those geniuses in the meeting room looked up to him and was eager to work for him, then Ace must be the real deal. I wasn't sure what was in store for me in the future, but I knew one thing for certain. I didn't want to let Lauren down. I wanted to show Ace and the world that the faith that Lauren placed in me wasn't misplaced. Thank you for choosing me. I'll work hard and I'll try my best not to disappoint you, I said with renewed determination. Excellent. We'll start right away, Ace said without bothering to hide his excitement. Ace jumped out of his seat energetically before rounding the table to stand right at my side. I stood up from my seat when he extended his hand towards me for a professional handshake. Since we'll be working together from now on, I hoped that we would get along and I look forward to learning so much from him. Slowly, I reached out my hand and placed it in his. His much larger hand grasped mine firmly as he shook it while his captivating eyes smiled at me along with his beautiful lips. A few seconds passed. Was it just me or was he holding onto my hand a little too long? I tried to pull my hand back while keeping a polite smile plastered on my face, but that only made Ace grip my hand tighter. My eyes widened in shock when I realized that he wasn't willing to let go of my hand. Sir, I murmured as I tried to pull my hand back again. Instead of letting go, Ace pulled on my hand, and I soon found my body pressed up against his from the force of his pull. Instinctively, I looked up at his face in astonishment. Ace smirked down at me before I felt the heat of his lips crushing down against mine. His arm wrapped around my body before his large hand held the back of my head to keep me from escaping from his demanding kiss. His warm and soft lips kissed me seductively and I was overwhelmed by his presence, the heat of his body against mine, and his intoxicating smell. His kiss felt so pleasurable and slowly, my eyes drifted closed. Ace probed my lips open with the wet tip of his teasing tongue before he thrusted his tongue deeply into the depth of my mouth. He let out a low groan as our kiss deepened while I moaned softly into our kiss. His tongue sought out mine and engaged it in a fervent dance. I could taste him as he tasted and began devouring my mouth. His arm tightened around my body and pulled me closer, pressing the length of our bodies tightly together. He's so warm. I can feel his body heat seeping into my skin through my clothes. Ace kissed me from another angle, and I found myself moaning even more into our heated kiss. I need to stop this. I need to stop him, but my body and my will felt so weak. My body wouldn't listen to me as my lips and tongue began kissing him back in abandon. This is so wrong. When Ace finally broke our kiss, I was panting for air from the intensity of our steamy kiss. My mind was a chaotic daze and I had to blink rapidly to clear my mind and return to the reality in front of me. Ace still held me against him as he looked down into my face. The raw desire swimming in his eyes scared me, but the excitement that I felt when he held and kissed me scared me even more. Don't worry. I'm not really insulted. You see that I'm not that professional on matters not strictly related to work. Ace said with a small laugh. His head dipped down again, and I turned my face to the side before he could capture my lips in another wild series of kisses. Wait, sir. I protested as I tried to push against his hard chest. He's so muscular. Call me Ace when we're alone. Ace whispered in a seductive drawl. I murmured, not sure how I was supposed to react to that. And I'll call you Rena, Ace readily suggested. Karina is fine. I said firmly. Why are you acting so distant? You did tell me to call you Rena before. Ace said with a mocking smile. When? I asked in a stunned whisper. That night, Ace said before he smiled mischievously at me. I hated the fact that he seemed to remember everything so clearly from that night while I couldn't remember anything but vague fragments that were so scattered and disconnected. I felt heat rise from my neck up to my cheeks and then all over my face as I blushed madly. Did I really tell him that when we spent the night together? Bed'odem, to be continued. Chapter 48. You are listening at novelfull.audio. 48. A demanding devil. What about being my girlfriend? Have you decided on that yet? Ace asked with me still locked in his arms. I am definitely not taking that position. I refused loudly as I pushed hard against his chest in an attempt to free myself. Ace looked at me with widened eyes in surprise before his expression quickly turned into a sorrowful sulking one. Why would you turn me down? I really can't understand a girl like you, Ace said with genuine confusion. He's the CEO and my boss, of course, I would turn him down. There's also a no dating policy in this company. Plus, I wasn't in love with him. Or anything. What makes him think that I'll say yes just like that? You're my boss. I mumbled to remind both him and myself. You're right about that, but I'm absolutely certain that you'll fall in love with me very soon. If you haven't already. Ace said as he stared deeply into my eyes. Where does this man get his confidence from? I just sighed in defeat. Not wanting to discuss this topic any further, I decided to change the flow of our conversation by asking him a question that had been on my mind for a while. I thought that you already had a secretary. I said questioningly. My mind quickly recalled the beautiful blonde woman who I had seen walking around the company very often. The first time that I saw her was when I first joined the company and was waiting for Ace. I found out later that that gorgeous lady in the red dress was actually his secretary. Did she quit already? Oh, you mean Claudia. She had to quit recently due to health issues. It really was quite unfortunate. I really enjoyed working with her and we got along very well with each other, Ace explained with some regret in his voice. I see. I hope she gets better soon, I replied. So, she quite because of health issues. I hope so too, Ace replied casually. Seeing that it wasn't my place to really ask any more questions, I decided to drop that topic there. I've synced your calendar up with mine so you can see my calendar. What is on my calendar is basically what should be on yours as well because you're supposed to be with me always, Ace explained professionally. I took out my phone and saw that he was right. My work calendar had been synced with his and I could see his schedule. Now, let me see his schedule for today. My eyes widened at the endless list of meetings that seemed to run on well into the night. Is this what the CEO calendar looks like? Oh my. Let's go. There's a meeting in that room over there in less than 5 minutes. Ace said before he headed straight for our next destination. I spent the day following Ace around like a little puppy at his heels. True to his words from before, wherever he went, I followed. Ace had many back-to-back meetings and all of them were grueling, stressful and demanding. At least, that was clearly the case for the other people who attended the meeting with him. As for Ace, he treated every meeting like a walk in the park with a warm and welcoming breeze. I learned first-handed how Ace earned the title of the Devil CEO. Why? Ace asked from where he was seated at the head of the long meeting table. I sat on a chair to the side as I looked on at Ace before my gaze shifted to the thin middle-aged man who was visibly shaking where he stood in front of the presentation screen. This was the third time that Ace had asked the same question to the man. His question was simple, but it demanded so much. The client was unsatisfied with the shooting location, so we had to make some last-minute changes, the man replied softly. Ace's eyes narrowed at the man, and I held my breath because I had a very good guess of what he was about to ask next. Why? Ace asked again with his eyes glued menacingly at the man. I winced when Ace spoke that word. Now was the third time that he had asked the same question and it seemed like no matter what the answer was, Ace was going to ask that same question over and over again. I felt so lucky that I wasn't that man right now. No one should have to go something so mentally stressful as this. The atmosphere in the room was stifling and no one dared to speak a word or make a sound. Perhaps the client changed their mind or that we didn't present the right options for them to choose from at the start, the man said admittingly. There was a pause, and I held my breath while I prayed that this grilling session would come to an end soon before the poor man peed his pants. He was a senior project lead, and it was clear that his project was struggling badly. After shooting the entire commercial, the client rejected the first demo and demanded for an entire revamp by changing the location, which meant that everything had to be redone. Changing the location didn't just mean refilming the whole thing, it meant tweaking the design, storyboards, and everything else. It was an unfortunate and a massive and costly mess. Why? Ace asked, his eyes never leaving the man. I bit my lower lip and winced as if in pain along with the other people seated at the table. We all tried to hide our reactions and silenced our depressing sighs. This time the man seemed to run out answers, either that or he figured out that none of his answers would satisfy Ace. I could understand him completely, if I were in his position that I shivered just at the thought of it and didn't dare to imagine that scenario any further. Ace flipped over some papers in the file that was in front of him before dumping it down with hard smack back onto the table. Apparently, he wasn't pleased with what he had seen on the pages. To be continued. Chapter 49. You are listening at novelfull.audio. 49 Everywhere with him. Beov, send this project over to the CEO's office. The team will fix it. You see, apart from dealing with key projects, we also fix the shitty messes when other teams can't even deal with their regular projects, Ace spat without hiding his utter disappointment. He shook his head like he deserved to see and hear something better than the presentation just now. Without another word, he got up from his seat and the others quickly did the same. Ace walked out of the room without looking back while the others bowed respectfully. With that, the meeting came to a close. Ace didn't even wait for me, so it was my responsibility to try to keep up with him. When we were outside in the hallway, I kept my distance from him because I was simply scared and extremely intimidated by him. The Devil CEO. After a few meetings that went exactly like that and ended in a very similar fashion, I finally understood why he had that title. I knew that Ace was scary when he got serious, but I never knew that he was this scary. Ace still seemed like he was in a bad mood, which wasn't good news for me because I sort of have to talk to him right now. Next up is dinner with a client at the Everly Pavilion Hotel. Finally, it's the last thing on today's schedule, I told him in a small voice. Ace sighed as he stopped walking, and I took that as a sign that he was waiting for me to catch up to his side. Thanks, he said, surprisingly calmly when I stood at his side. Should I get you a drink? I offered. No need, he declined immediately. Finally, the day is over for me. I'll send Ace off to have dinner with the client and then I can head back to my apartment for some much-needed rest. Today had been such a long day and my feet are killing me already. Why did I have to wear these heels today of all days? I bet there are blisters on the back of my heels and I didn't even walk that much. I walked Ace to the front of the building where his driver was waiting for him along with the usual black Bentley that he uses. Enjoy dinner, I said politely as I waved to him. What are you doing? Ace asked in a low voice as his eyes narrowed suspiciously at me. My body froze at this gaze. Did I do something wrong just now? I'm sending you off to dinner with the client. I responded. I can see that. I'm asking because it doesn't make sense for you to send me off when you're supposed to join me for dinner, Ace said pointedly. Me. I have to go to dinner with you as well. I asked, surprised at this sudden turn of events. Ace looked at me like I was dumb and blind before he shook his head and sighed. You will do everything that I say and go wherever I go. Work doesn't end straight on the clock if you're my secretary. What kind of secretary goes off to rest while her boss is still working? Ace complained before he grabbed my wrist. Before I could apologize or make any excuse for myself, Ace had dragged me with him into the back seat of the huge black Bentley. Clearly, as far as Ace was concerned, work was still far from over. Luckily, I read up on the client's profile a little, so I had a pretty decent idea of who we were meeting. The client and his company were also famous, so it wasn't a surprise that he could book a dinner time with Ace. Jim Langley, current CEO of one of the largest fashion outlets on the continent. His company specializes in running outlet for designer products across many large outlets in various countries on this continent. His company experienced rapid growth as a result of one of the marketing campaigns that our company helped him with in the past. Since then, he's been one of our loyal clients. Ace. So happy that you could make it, Jim said with a beaming smile as he stood up from his seat and shook Ace's hand firmly. Happy to meet you. It's been too long, Ace said warmly. And this beautiful lady with you is? Jim asked as his eyes fell on me. This is Karina, she's my personal secretary, Ace replied as he introduced me. A pleasure to meet you. I'm Karina, I introduced myself politely. I see. Welcome. I'm sure Ace can take on more projects now with you helping him out, Jim said, followed by a laugh before he gestured with his hand for us to take a seat. Soon a man joined us, and Jim quickly introduced him as the new head of marketing for his company. The man was probably in his late 40s. This is Johnny. He just joined us as head of marketing. I wanted to introduce him to you so that we can work together more in the future. We are thinking of rebranding the look and feel of our outlets very soon, and of course, we would like to work with Jess's and Hills on that, Jim said. Sounds like an interesting project. Rebranding is one of the things that we do best. As always, I'll be happy to help out and I'm always thankful for the trust that you place in us, Ace said politely, but I could tell that he meant every word that he said as well. Excellent. Well, we don't need to discuss the details now, but Johnny here will definitely be in touch with your company soon to work on this, Jim said with a satisfied smile. The meeting that followed was more relaxed and it seemed more like a catch-up between friends rather than a serious business talk. Of course, business was discussed, and some thoughts were suggested by both sides on what the project could mean and the various directions that the project could take. To be continued. Chapter 50. You are listening at novelfull.audio. 50. Driving me home. At first, I thought the luxurious branding of the outlet worked well, but now we're not so sure. After adding in more trendy brands that cater to the younger adult population, we fear the current branding might seem too old-fashioned for the younger generation, Johnny chimed in with his view. The conversation went on as we switched from food to drinking some wine. Of course, I drank very moderately to make sure that I didn't get anywhere near drunk or even tipsy. Just staring at alcohol nowadays gave me a bad feeling and I couldn't help but recall the disaster that had just taken place when I overdrank that one night. It was just that one night, but I ended up sleeping with Ace. No more drinking for tonight. I placed my wine glass down firmly and pushed it out of the way. Ace was sitting right next to me and it would be another disaster if I added alcohol into my bloodstream. I should never mix the ingredients of disaster together to create another disaster again. By the time that the dinner with the client finally came to an end, it was already quite late in the evening. The driver drove us back to the office just as Ace instructed. "How are you getting home?" Ace asked once we arrived at the office. "Oh, I'll take the train," I replied with a small smile. "This late?" Ace asked as his eyes widened at me. "I take the train even when it's late at night all the time." It wasn't like I had much of a choice because I didn't have a car and taxis were expensive and may potentially be more dangerous than the train for a woman traveling alone. "It's pretty safe," I said before smiling a little at him. "I'll drive you," Ace stated decisively without asking for my preference. "There's no need for you to do that," I quickly countered. "Come along," Ace said casually as he took my hand in his and held it firmly. "Wait, sir," I said, but Ace didn't listen. "Call me Ace. There's no one else here," he reminded me as he dragged me along after him. "I can go back by myself." "There's no need for you to drive me back," I repeated once again. "I want to drive you back," Ace said as if that reason alone should suffice. "Right." Not knowing what else to say to change his mind, I just nodded my head once in acknowledgement. The next thing I knew, Ace had dragged me to the parking lot where his car was parked. The parking lot was empty since everyone had left the office already at this time of night. The wind blew and my hair fluttered all around my face. It was a little surprising at first when I found out that Ace drove himself instead of having a driver to drive for him all the time both during work and off of work, but when I saw his car, I completely understood why having a driver wouldn't work out. Ace's car was one of those fancy and ultra-expensive Ferrari supercars. Thankfully it wasn't bright red because that wouldn't suit his image at all. Instead, Ace had opted for a metallic gunmetal color which I thought suited his devilish self perfectly. The devil could substitute his chariot for this Ferrari in the modern day, easy. "What's your address?" he asked casually. I told him my address and he inputted it in the GPS navigator while I buckled my seatbelt. When he saw that I was done we were on our way. It was late and the traffic was light around the business district where our office was, but I felt that wasn't enough reason to justify the high speed at which Ace was speeding. "Do you always drive this fast?" I asked to soften my complaint. "Too fast for you?" he asked as he turned to smile devilishly my way. My heart skipped a beat, and it wasn't from the fear of speeding along an empty road. "Maybe you should keep your eyes on the road," I managed to say to cover up my own embarrassment. Despite the high price tag of the car's interior was small and that made me even more conscious of how close Ace is to me right now. I took in a deep breath and turned to look out the window just so that I could keep my eyes off Ace. "How was your first day as my secretary?" he asked. Although he did not stress on the word, I felt a strange yet pleasant feeling when he called me his secretary. Karina, get a hold of yourself please or you're going to end up in a bigger mess than the one you got into with Kyle, I warned myself over and over again. I think I'm still not great at the job but I'm starting to understand what I have to do. Hopefully, I'll be more useful to you soon and I think it's good that I'm learning and getting to see many new things, I replied humbly. Interesting. I think you're doing well, Ace replied. Really? I said excitedly, before I could stop myself. Suddenly, I found myself smiling just at that slight compliment that he offered. Why do I feel like a puppy waiting for my master to pet my head after completing a good deed? Yup. I like having you around, Ace replied with a small laugh before he turned to smile charmingly my way. The effect that his smile had on my poor heart made me look away instantly before he could see the blush creeping up my cheeks. Unfortunately, the car had to make a stop at a red light and that meant that Ace had a moment of free time from driving. Do you have a fever? Your face is all red. Ace said with clear concern in his voice as he leaned from his seat over towards me. R.G. I murmured in a panic. He's so close and the car is so small that I can't evade him. To be continued.